With the NFC West officially won, the Niners move into the 1 seed in the NFC playoff standings, and on Christmas night, they would face the number 1 seed in the AFC and hope to prove themselves as the best team in the NFL. Alright, let's rip the band-aid off right away. This was a bad game. There are no excuses, there are no explanations, the game was bad. In fact, I'll go ahead and I'll confess something now. I've never seen this game from start to finish, and I've never really watched the highlights either. I mean, it was Christmas night, I was spending time with friends, and every time I checked on the game, it seemed to get worse and worse as the night went on. It's almost impossible to come back from 4 interceptions, regardless of who was at fault for each of them. And I've also never watched the talking head shows after the game either, because I knew what each of them was going to say. Brock Purdy lost them the game. Brock Purdy was taken out late in the game when it was out of hand, and some people will say that he got benched because of the 4th interception. Some will say that he was taken out of the game because of the stinger he sustained in the Cardinals game from the week prior. And officially that's the reason that Shanahan gave, and who were we to argue with the coach? But regardless, it doesn't matter. They lost. Purdy looked bad. End of story. Now, like in episode 4, I wasn't sure how to tackle this particular moment in the season. I didn't want this episode to be negative, especially given the fact that it was Christmas, so I decided to remain positive. And I thought, how about we go over all the narratives that Purdy so far had put to rest in a lot of people's minds. Narrative number 1, Purdy doesn't elevate the team elevates Purdy. People like to point out that before Purdy, the San Francisco 49ers were doing just fine with Jimmy G. In fact, they like to point out that it didn't matter who the quarterback even was, the system did all the work. Before Purdy started, George Kittle only had 4 touchdowns, and after Purdy started, his production would increase dramatically and would finish the season with 11, a career best. To put that into perspective, he scored more touchdowns in a 4-game span after Purdy started than he did in any singular regular season since being drafted in 2017, coming close in 2021 with 6. And then when you look at 2023, he once again had 6 touchdowns, and 3 of those came in the same game against the Cowboys, something he had never done before. That was until Purdy became the starting quarterback. But that's just Kittle, which brings me to narrative number 2. Purdy is the dink and dunk quarterback. Anyone can throw the ball 5 yards to Deebo Samuel and have him take it to the end zone. Nothing is going to touch Deebo's 2021 season in terms of production. The main difference between that season and 2023 is that after Purdy started, Samuel actually had more receiving touchdowns than he did rushing. He carried the ball less, and with Purdy being able to stretch the field vertically better than Garoppolo, Deebo found himself being more of a traditional receiver, especially in the later games of the season where he was responsible for some pretty deep touchdowns that didn't rely on his yak ability. And of course that leads me to number 3. Purdy relies too heavily on checkdowns and can't throw deep. I realize I went over this last episode, so I won't rehash all of that. Instead, I wanted to point directly to Brandon Aiyuk, who I mentioned was becoming Purdy's best deep threat. In fact, Aiyuk was having the best season of his career in 2023, managing to achieve 100 plus receiving yards in 6 games, including the Ravens game, up to this point in the season. That included a career-high 156 yards in his game against the Bucs. That should come as no surprise, given that he had that 76-yard touchdown in that game. Speaking of checkdowns, that brings me to the last narrative that I wanted to speak on that had gained traction as the season progressed. Brock Purdy can't be the MVP of the league. He's not even the MVP of his own team. Christian McCaffrey is. You may have noticed in the last episode that I pointed out specifically McCaffrey's touchdowns in both Cardinals games, and for those who were really paying attention, you may have also noticed that I've never actually discussed the fact that McCaffrey was on his way to breaking the record for most consecutive games with a touchdown until the Jags game when he wasn't able to get that 18th TD. And the reason is because I didn't want to take away from what Purdy was doing until the time came to talk about it. While 2019 would be his best year for total yardage, managing to put up 2,300 total yards, he would manage to achieve another season with 2,000 plus yards in 2023, but it would be his touchdowns that solidified his true worth, as he would tie for the most touchdowns in the league with 21. This would eventually earn him the honor of being the 2023 Offensive Player of the Year. And while his receiving yards would be about half of what they were in 2019, his receiving touchdowns would actually increase from 4 to 7, giving him the distinction of being the running back with the most receiving touchdowns in 2023. But here's the thing. I don't believe it was a coincidence that each of these players had career-high numbers after Purdy started at quarterback. You can call it the system, but the fact is that someone has to be able to run that system to its absolute best, and no other quarterback had ever run Kyle Shanahan's system as good as Purdy had, and one bad game wasn't going to change that. It's said that the mark of a true champion isn't what happens when they're knocked down, but how they get up and move ahead, and it just so happened that after being knocked down in the worst possible way, Brock would get up and move ahead in the best possible way. And that's going to do it for this video. If you like this content, drop a like and leave a comment. To stay up to date, click that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see ya in the next one.